Welcome and hello, everyone. Welcome to our final SciCommers Mentor Chat for the spring 2026 season. I'm Amel Hussein, and while it's a bittersweet reach to the end of the academic year, I am so excited about wrapping up with our guest today, our guest mentor. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, or if you've never been with us, this is SciCommers is an international community of scientists, journalists, professionals who are dedicated to the art and impact of science communication. Our goal has always been to bridge the gap between complex research and public understanding, ensuring that science doesn't just stay in the lab, but reaches the people that it serves. And so today's session is incredibly special. We are shifting our focus towards the structural side of science communication and looking at how we build, sustain, and fund our impactful programs that are needed the most. To lead this conversation, I am honored to introduce Dr. Erin Lynch. Dr. Lynch is the president of QEM Network, which is Quality Education for Minorities. She is a powerhouse in the world of research development and a tireless advocate for institutional equity. Her work at QEM focuses on improving education and career opportunities for minority students, faculty, particularly within the STEM fields. And she brings a wealth of expertise in navigating the complexities of federal funding, program design, and building sustainable infrastructures at minority serving institutions and historically Black colleges and universities. The theme for our talk today is going to be on equity and SciComm infrastructure. And I am really excited for this conversation. So we're going to talk about how to write a better hook or edit a video, but we're going to talk about where and with what. So how do we ensure that SciComm initiatives are deeply rooted? What does the funding landscape look like for those kinds of programs? And how can we as a community better support the growth of those kinds of hubs of knowledge? Just a little housekeeping. We're going to begin with Dr. Lynch's presentation, and then we'll follow that up with a question and answer. But you can feel free in the chat to introduce yourself and where you're joining us from, as well as include any questions that you have along the way, and we'll be sure to address them during the Q&A. So Dr. Lynch, we are so grateful to have your insight, and we close out the year. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So I would love to be able to get started with a little twist that I did on our theme for today, and making sure that we start with the most important question, since this is the last talk of the year, but reminding us as to why science communication is so important, right? Okay, so I'm going to get started with the SharePoint, not my SharePoint, but I'm going to go into some other details. Share, there we go. Here we go. That's what I'm gonna do. All right. So, on a spin on our topic in context of equity, and resource development acquisition, so I want us to think about, we're going to take a look at the national trends around science communication and the national efforts, and then what types of efforts or what types of resources are available for you all to be able to contribute to this work, right? So first and foremost, we start with the why. So, personal narrative. I have started down this journey of science communication for the last year. And so I can be very, very specific. I became intentional about the use of digital media and science communications in September of 2025. And since that time, my viewership, right, the people that actually follow me in social media, has grown from about 707 people to over 20,000 people at this point. And the interesting aspect of that is my intentionality for trying to communicate the importance of science to the general public is just that, just to get conversations going about science for the general public so that they can further increase their scientific literacy, understand why science is important to their daily lives. And when you do that, you then open up the floodgates to all types of really interesting perspectives on science. For example, One of my most popular videos is over 3 million views at this point, and this was one of the longest threads that occurred in conversation because of this video. And you see very quickly it has 147 replies to this one comment that someone posted about weather modification being real and that my fear is blinding me as a scientist. And so, of course, my response to all things is I try to direct people back to the literature. I try to direct them back to like, well, that's not really true. And here's 4 or 5 articles that you can read, right, that help to support that that's not true. And then you see that this response that emerged from this is, well, I will not read anything from science, knowing who pays them to do the studies. I use my own discernment. It's real, like it or not. So that is why science communication is so important because we have people who have this level of cognitive dissonance that drives their actions and their belief in science. And it is our role and our responsibility as scientists to help educate the general masses around how they can make better decisions based in data, based in evidence, grounded in factual information, right? I have this phrase that I use often that it's real facts and not feel facts, because we often feel like something is true, but then when you look at the data, you're like, oh, that's not really true, is it? So constantly trying to present to the general public that this is a state of dynamic growth that we as a community and as a nation should be okay with, right? That it's okay to have new things emerge that reshape the way that we envision or think about things. Um, but science communication is key to be able to do this, right? In terms of national trends, like you've got tons of people trying to do some things, and some of the more centralized locations are the Center for Communication, Science Communication Institute. So, SciComm Institute is a 501(c)(3), and they are a platform by which people can actually get toolkits and examples, and they put out a lot of information about science. As a field to be able to help with political decisions, policy things, right? So this is their main focus. Those are the SCI's primary focus is around science communication. And while it inadvertently impacts the public, right? I think their focus really more is around the policy piece, which then ultimately, impacts the public. Another location or another place that's a great resource is SciReach. Now, this one I have not fully vetted, so I'm gonna be honest with you there. So SciReach is almost like what's the website that was back in the day where you could like go and like buy things from not eBay, but Craigslist. There we go. So SciReach is like the Craigslist for the scientific community, right? So anybody and everybody can put their science events on this platform. And so it's supposed to serve as a global directory for what they call science communication activities, but their context for science communication activities could just be a workshop, could just be like a scientific expo, could be a community event. So they're classifying all of those things as scientific communication and not just the intentional efforts of how do you translate your science into messaging, right? Which is the typical definition of science communication. To further substantiate these points, right? There's a lot of research now that's moving into this space. I myself am personally working on a proposal right now to be able to apply some of what we know in the research to what the gaps still are, to be able to further solidify science communication as an area that has some empirical guidings. That's the word I want to use, right? And and I just had this conversation with a group of colleagues about 15 minutes ago. We don't have standards to help really measure whether or not specific techniques or strategies are effective in science communication, right? And so once we start creating toolkits and ways to be able to measure effectiveness and designing criteria by which scientists can determine, oh, yeah, this was a good post, or this was a good reach, or this was a good something, in the same way that we did back in the day with the H index to be able to determine your reach of your publications. We don't have that for the digital science communication space. And so thinking about what that looks like could be really important. And so you have a lot of really smart researchers trying to explore this and try to figure out those gaps. Right. So these are going to be the big three. And then we're going to talk about finding some opportunities and how do you tap into resources that are available. So again, because we don't have a lot of research around exploring empirically science communication as a field, these are things that have come out of the research in terms of qualitative and anecdotal, right? So first and foremost, science communication is typically an afterthought for most scientists. So they're really, which ties into number two, they are really, really thinking about, oh, well, yeah, I communicate my science. I wrote a paper about it. Problem with that is based on the last study that was done in this space, the average number of people that read a single research article is 8. And it's probably a little bit closer to 3, right? So you read it, the editor read it, and if you send it to your parents read it, right? So the average number globally is about 8 people to read an article, right? So that means you've got thousands and thousands of articles that have had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, or even thousands of reads, and then you have that many more that have had 0 reads, right? So that's how that averages out to about 8 people, right? Part of that is because I think as a scientific community, we are very traditional in the sense of how we communicate our science. We feel as though this is a feel fact and not a real fact, but we feel as though, communicating to the general public might be beneath us when it comes to how we communicate our science. And so, science communication has typically been entrenched in academic communities, right? Peer review processes. And so we are communicating with each other about our science as peers, but we are not communicating with the people for whom our science is supposed to be impacting, or for whom the motivation of doing the science, is grounded, right? So we don't typically just do science for science sake. There is something that drives us to want to try to explore certain topics or answer certain questions, right? Whether it's to extend someone's lifespan, whether it's, to make medicines better, whether it's to make buildings and things safer. There is a humanistic aspect behind why we do the science. And we often forget that we need to further communicate the value of that science to people beyond just ourselves in the academic community. Right. And then lastly, observationally, of course, but this is also granted, there's no standard metric for being able to determine whose voices are the important ones within the scientific community, other than the standard, right, of like, well, you got into the national academies and, your paper received this many, reviews, or your paper received this many awards, right? Those standard things. But when it comes to the digital science communication space, we still don't really have any type of scientific metrics or standard metrics that help to show that someone's voice around science is having an impact, right? And so I'll give you this case in point. So you have various websites and platforms who are trying to help identify these folks, right? And so this platform specifically, I appreciate because of the length of detail that they go in to be able to unpack the quote unquote influencers, right? And so this website very, very specifically will tell you, it'll give you an example of someone who's identified as a science influencer, but then it gives you the actual metrics and analytics behind their platform. And that's the really important piece, because in this social media space, there are actual companies that allow you to buy followers. And so you might have, 500,000 followers, but if, as you see in this person's profile, if 20% of those followers are fake, then are you really reaching people? No, right? You also see that with this one quote unquote influencer, right? She's got 200 and almost 50,000 followers, that this one person only has a 2% engagement rate, which means even the content that they are putting out to their, 250,000 followers, very, very few people are engaging with that. And so are they really communicating anything? It's almost like if a tree falls in the woods, doesn't make a sound. Are they really communicating anything if less than 3% of the people who quote unquote follow them are even engaging with the content by way of conversation, by way of sharing it, by way of, anything else, right? And that's how social media algorithms work. They work based on engagement. And so your messaging is amplified when you have the engagement calculations that are done automatically through whatever platform it is that you're using, right? So this website is a great one in breaking folks, not breaking the folks down, but in giving better numbers around people's platforms and whether or not they are actual influencer in this space. I thought it was very interesting that this platform versus another platform identified like the first five people are all women. But if you go to another platform that gives the top 10, eight out of the top 10 are all men. And they're all men that we actually know by name. So like Bill Nye Science Guy, Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? So they are ranked as top science influencers in the digital media space. And yet none of these women showed up on those lists either. So it's, again, no standard, right? No standard as to how we define who has the most impact on science through the digital media space based on their influence in social media, right? So I'm gonna pause there for any questions real quick before we jump into, now that we know all of these things, how do we find the resources to be able to support the work that we do to do them? So I'm gonna pause there.
And we can take any questions from the audience.
And you can ask any questions too that you might have. So you are part of the audience.
I am. Thank you so much, Dr. Lynch, for the presentation. I think it's super interesting to see the differences between gender and who gets, recognized as a scientific communication influencer. And it's very interesting to see how males dominate in the space. What are your thoughts about that, and why do you think that's the case, that women aren't getting as much? Is it credibility? Is it just like bias? Like what do you think it is?
Yeah, I think it's a number of things. The more I delve deep into particular social media platforms, and the more I learn about how the algorithm works, women are at an inherent disadvantage when it comes to social media, because the algorithm will actually pick up visually whether or not we have beautified ourselves. And when the algorithm calculates that into its distribution, for the women who don't do certain things, like maybe apply a filter or who, I don't wear makeup, right? So I only wear mascara, like when I'm on camera, that's it. But for the women like me, who don't overwhelmingly like glamify themselves, we are then at a disadvantage with the algorithm because it will not necessarily push our videos out because they're viewed as like visually unappealing, right? Regardless as to the content. So there are baked in, gender sexist like rules to the technology, as to why I think you will see more men than women whose ideas are being promoted in these spaces, right? I think there is also an aspect around just from society, men are overwhelmingly believed in their credentials when it comes to, what we're putting out. I had a situation just this morning with a colleague of mine who is now moving into the space as well and creating content around higher education. Um, and she was literally questioned about whether or not she had a doctorate. And you just don't see that happening with men, right? And so her response was, well, she posted the link to her actual dissertation in ProQuest. And I was like, who's got to do all that, right? Like, why are we doing that? Um, so I think there are a number of things, right, that end up impacting science communication outcomes when it comes to factors that are demographically related.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's yeah, it's disheartening a little bit when your authority is questioned just based on your gender and like related
absolutely.
things. So thank you
Yeah.
for bringing that and illuminating that for us, Dr. Lynch. Yeah, the fantastic discussion here. Others, I see there's a question now in the chat. In the current age of social media, do you think it's going to be the dominant mode of science influence, or do you still have significant impact from the literary or other structural medium? Asking because I'm also very social media shy. That's a great question.
Yeah, I think it depends on your audience, right? So if the purpose of your work is to generate new scientific ideas or to contribute to the canon of scientific knowledge, then the literary aspects and the traditional models they're not going anywhere. Like those aren't going anywhere. However, because there is so much emphasis right now, particularly at the federal level, as to the role of science for the general public and commercial community, right? The capitalistic community, you're going to have to figure out a way to be able to get your ideas to those people. And those people are not reading scientific journals, right? I mean, they're not even reading magazines at this point, right? So, the overwhelming modality for learning about news has now transitioned to social media. Right. And so I think, that's going to impact us in the scientific community as well. And so we are thinking about, and I'm going to show you a couple of tools. We are thinking about how do we better prepare scientists for that transition in a way that they are able to contribute to improving and increasing scientific literacy of our country with their work in the face of all the noise, right? Like I just said this to colleagues yesterday. There's a platform that somebody created. It's got like 1.5 million followers or something crazy high. And the whole platform is literally bread falling over. Like that's it. It's just videos of bread falling over. But the platform was created because this individual said that they wanted to create a platform that had more followers than a very specific political figure. And so the messaging of that platform was anti this political figure. The content of that platform is nothing that brings value to my life, right? And so you are competing against those types of things, right? Once you come into this social media space, this digital media space, that's who you're competing against. You're competing against people playing with squirrel puppets, right? You're competing with, I mean, just the insanity of the videos that it's non-thinking. I call it non-thinking TV. And in this space, it's really non-thinking social media, right? So that's who we're competing against. So we have to be able to break through that noise with the importance of our ideas. So it's coming. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, this is mind-blowing. Thank you so much for this. It's so enriching. And yeah, I think about misinformation and disinformation and how we can't really fact check some of the social media or most of it. I mean, how do you put guardrails on something that is so like rampant and there's no way to like really filter out what's true versus what's reality, what's fake news, and what are your thoughts on how do we compete with that and contend with that when we know that there's so much misinformation out there and we want our truth and valuable stories from the scientific field to get out there and reach our audience. And then we have to like kind of filter out the noise with the misinformation that's potentially out there. So
Yeah.
how do you navigate that?
Yeah. I think the only way to fight fire is with water. That's right. Like we have to debunk these things, right? I have made it a point in a few of my videos to be able to do that, right? So I see a video where someone is just talking nonsense about something, I'll make a responsive video that is grounded in the facts and the statistics, right? And I show people where I get the information from so that they are then empowered to be able to find those publicly available resources as well, right? So that's one way. Like we have to debunk. We have to be okay with like, that's not right. And let me tell you why that's not right. Like we have to debunk. And I think we also have to realize, and the influencers that I've been working with who've been teaching me these tips and tricks, right? The other thing is we have to realize is that we're not making content for ourselves. Like we are literally making content for um, the entertainment of others. And so that means that we need to think about what and how people engage with social media. And so a single social media video typically has three parts, right? The first part is the hook. And so that is the aspect that gets them past the first 3 seconds of viewing. And so the algorithm actually tracks that. Matter of fact, I will show you. We'll go directly into, I can show you exactly. Let's see. Uh, So we're going to go behind the scenes, right, for this.
Love it.
Yeah. Let me do share screen. Okay. So for example, so this is my social media, right? This is my Instagram, which is my primary platform. But you go into dashboard. The dashboard is where all of your analytics are. And I want to go into content dashboard. And I want to go into there we go. Okay. So these are some of my most recent videos. Let's find one that's done pretty well so far. Okay, so this one's at 4.3 thousand views. That's more views than that, but okay, so here's how the algorithm ends up doing these things. So it will calculate engagement based on the number of likes times the number of comments times the number of shares times the number of saves. And so it multiplies all of those things together and then takes that and divides it by your number of followers. And so that then shows, for example, so if I have a video, so like this video, at this point, I have about approximately 15,000 followers, right? But this video has had, if you see this, 6,400 views, 64,000 views, right? It reached 42,000 accounts. It has 6,000 interactions, 600 interactions, 3,500 likes, da 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 da, all the shares. So it multiplies all this stuff together. And because that number is higher than the number of followers I have, the algorithm will now push this out because it shows that people are engaging with it. Okay. The other thing that your data analytics will show you, let me go to, I want, go back. I'm gonna go home. And then, no, I want to go to my home. Three dots. Let's see. Let's go back to that same video. Oh, is that doing that? Maybe I can't do this on my laptop. Let me see. Even facts. Yeah, I don't know if I can do it on my laptop. Okay.
There's
But one of the other managed posts. Go ahead. What were you going to add?
no, I was just gonna say I saw those three dots down there. I was gonna point you to
Yeah,
not the same. Okay.
not the same. But like what you can do, let's see, views. So on my cell phone, I can do this. I don't know why. Hmm. Maybe that's why. Maybe it only does it in the app. So in the app, right? So not just on the web base, but in the app, I can actually look at the so they'll show the video viewership. And so they will show the point at which most people stop watching the video, right? And then that provides you a level of analytics around, where did people lose their attention in the video, right? Was it, 5 seconds in? Was it 50 seconds in? Right. And so there's actually, I don't know why it doesn't show it here, but there's actually information that shows you how long a person engaged with a specific video for amount of time. And let's see how quickly I can actually do this. So I'm going to go here and in real time, I'm going to pull it up and then I'm going to send it as see. Let's go to insights. Uh, Dashboard, content you shared, video. Nope, nope, nope. Let's go. We're gonna do the same video. Yep, this one. Oh, there we go. Watch time. Okay, that's what I need. And that's what I want. Okay, so I'm gonna take a picture of this, and then I'm gonna email this to myself and open it up real quick. So you all can see it in real time. And then I'm going to take a picture of this. Scroll up right there. And send this via email in real time. Okay. Okay. All right. So we're going to come out of this and I'm going to show you exactly how these platforms work. To email. There they are. Perfect. They're both there. Screenshot. Now, screenshot. Now, point. Third picture. Download this and this. Insert. There we go. Perfect. Okay. I'm gonna do share screen. PowerPoint. Okay, here you go. Oh, shoot. All right. So these are the insights that you get from the actual app, right? And so you see that same video that I just showed you all, right? So again, 64,000 views, watch time. This is critically important. This is how the algorithm determines that whether or not it wants to continuously push it out so that it shares your messaging. The more watch time you have, that means the more people are staying on the app to engage with content. And that's the whole point of every social media app. The point of those platforms is to keep people on the platforms, right? That's how they do their advertising. That's how they do everything. So their goal is to have as many people on those platforms for as long as possible, writ large. And so if you understand that that's how these platforms work, then you can design messaging that wants to keep people engaged with your message. So see, this is the second data point that it also provides. It shows me for that singular video, again, the one that had the 64,000 views, that single video had a peak in terms of viewership around May 13th, 14th, right? That's the first thing. So when it first posted May 8th, didn't really do very well up until about May 14th when it started peaking around 50,000, right? Overwhelmingly, it showed up in people's feed. So you see this 72% of how people found it was because it made it to their feed. So they didn't come searching on my page. It made it to their feed because the algorithm started pushing it out. So it was in people's stories. So that's people who have shared it potentially in stories. The Reels tab, only about 6% of the people actually saw on a Reels tab, and only 1% of the people saw it from my actual page. So this was the algorithm doing its work to push this video out to be able to engage people. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, so the watch time, I just want to zero in on that for a little bit. So if your
yeah.
video, does it matter the length of your video? So like if I strategically want to have shorter video times because I know people's attention spans are kind of small and they will like tune out eventually if I do it 5 minutes. So like I'm gonna aim for like short video content between like less than a minute, for example. If my video is like on the shorter end, will that impact the way that this performs? And um, do they consider whether your segment is longer versus a short video?
Yeah, so the watch time is calculated by literally how much time people spend watching the video. So for example, back to mine, like I don't know if you can see that,
Right,
but the average watch time was only 51 seconds. Now
right.
I think this video, if I recall, is 3 minutes and 3 seconds long.
Oh,
So a couple of things happen with this one. One, the algorithm will tell you it will not push out anything longer than 3 minutes to new viewers. Now that's a lie. It
mhm.
won't push out videos that don't have high engagement rates to new viewers. And so this one clearly it got pushed out to new viewers because I don't have 64,000 followers, right? So that means this video made it out to people who don't typically follow me. Now, additionally, I also collaborated with somebody on this video, so that means it made it on their page and my page as well. So that definitely helped.
Mhm.
But yes, so it will only calculate the watch time based on how long people are watching the video. And
Oh,
it calculates that for every single person. So if you watch it for 51 seconds, I watch it for all 3 minutes, it's
mhm.
going to add up 3 minutes and 54 seconds as a watch time. And then over time, obviously, you see in the watch time full metric, 26 days, 14 hours, 6 minutes, 2 seconds. So it's calculating everybody and their engagement. So it will not matter whether or not it's a short video or a long video. What
Right.
matters is how long they actually watched what it was that you created.
Okay.
And so you will see videos that, have that might be 30 seconds long, but have millions and millions of views. Well, millions of views at 30 seconds. And there are different types of techniques and tools you can use where like a video will loop. And so, for example, if you have a 30-second video, but there are a lot of people who have commented on the video, and that you get stuck or you are able to get people to start reading those comments and engaging with those comments, and all the while your video is looping in the background, that increases the watch time,
Got it. Wow.
right?
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
if you have a 30-second video with lots of really great comments and people are like, oh, I'm going to comment on that. Oh, that's so silly. Oh, I agree with that. Then the whole while it's looping and it's looping and it's increasing the watch time, which then increases that metric, which then increases the algorithm pushing it out. So yeah. There's a lot of math involved in social media that people don't realize and understand, which is really fun. So, okay, let's see. All right, so that's behind the scenes. Yep, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Have you noticed any particular time of the day where your videos do better? Like, have you noticed any patterns with like when you post
Yeah.
things, does that impact their engagement? Or yeah, tell me about that.
Yes, and that plays perfectly into the next topic, which is the tools to be able to help you do these things, right? Okay. Oh, and that's for resources. So let's talk about some of these tools real quick. So there are a number of tools that I use that are heavily AI supported to be able to help me make this social media component of science communication a lot more effective. I run a full nonprofit that serves almost 900 colleges and universities. I don't have time to spend hours on end doing social media stuff, right? And so I use AI tools to really help make my time much more efficient. So there are two platforms that I use specifically. One is called, I'm sorry, real quick. One is called Real Trends and the other one is called Trend Talk. And so those two platforms, they actually monitor the it's not engagement rate, but like the volume of people who are on the internet for TikTok and for Instagram. And so in real time, I can see, okay, how many people, like what is the peak of volume that people are going to be online, that's when you probably want to post, right? And so, like for Instagram, there's typically 2 times per day. Instagram also gives you the metric as to when your viewers typically engage, right? So my viewers tend to engage around 6 p.m.
Okay.
during the weekdays. But then Instagram also has really high volume around noon. And so if you are really, really aggressive, you could post at noon and you could post again in the evening, when people are on their lunch break and people are, getting home from work and they just want to veg out.
Mhm.
TikTok is a little bit different. TikTok's a weirdo, right? Because it's a much younger generation. So they're not necessarily on during the day. So those numbers are typically high volume at like 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Mhm. Mhm.
You might not want to post that late at night, right? But then they have other tools that allow you to be able to schedule your posts.
Oh,
So, like something like Hootsuite. So, you can do what's called batch editing or batch design, where
right.
you create a number of videos and then you just plug them into Hootsuite and tell it when to post to your accounts for you. So, there's all types of tools like that that are really, really helpful. One of the things that I also do, both of these tools have some other built-in features where like it'll help you look at trends. It'll help you look at um creating scripts, or it'll help you with hooks. Like that was the one thing that I started to talk about. There are really 3 portions of a video, just like when you're writing a story or just like when you're writing a research article, right? You've got the intro, you've got the research part, you've got the summary or the conclusion, right?
Mhm.
It's almost the same thing with social media. You've got the hook, which is the intro, which is supposed to draw the person in. There are 3 types of hooks. The more you layer the hooks, the more people tend to be engaged. Then you have the actual content, like what is the message that you're actually trying to put forward? And then you have some sort of call to action typically at the end, whether that's like, follow, share, or, what comments do you have? Like something that's going to force them to want to engage, right? So when you're doing content that has actual intentional messaging, that's the structure. Hook, message, call to action, right? Those 3 things. When you have content that has no messaging, right? Bread falling over, doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter,
Right.
right? Doesn't really matter. But for us as scientists, we need structure. Like we need to follow the structure. You got to have the hook, you got to have the message you're trying to put out, and then you got to have whatever the call to action is for the people. Um, One of the other tools that I use very, very regularly is Perplexity and ChatGPT. So for ChatGPT, I will ask it to actually create scripts for me around certain content, right? So most of the content that I make is data-based. And so I'll have an Excel spreadsheet of some data analysis that I've been doing, or some notes around some data analytics that I've been doing for a specific topic or area. I'll upload those notes into ChatGPT, and I'll say, based on the following data, create an Instagram reel script that is no more than 90 seconds with the tonality of this, focusing on the findings from these data, right? And then it'll give me a script, and then I will cut and paste and play with that until I get it to the point where I want it, where it feels like it's me, right? And then I use that as scripts to be able to make my videos. Same thing with my research papers. I will upload a research paper into one of these platforms, Perplexity generally for that. I'll upload my research paper and I'll ask it to summarize my research paper for a 5th grader. Right. And then I'll take
Yeah.
that information, bring it over to chat, like based on this information, create for me a script around this content. All right. So I'm using all of these tools to help generate the things for me to be able to use to be able to make the content, so that I'm not spending hours and hours and hours on end to be able to do it. Right.
Yeah, no, efficiency is key, right? And you don't have time as a leader, um,
Don't.
you don't have time to do all of this manually. So it's great that there
No,
are these emergent technologies that help simplify this process for you. Thank you
absolutely.
so much for sharing it with us because I think it's really beneficial for us to learn these things. So yeah, continue.
Yeah, yeah. So now the last portion of our presentation, right? So we've
Yep.
talked about the importance of all of this. We've talked about why more scientists need to be engaged in science communication as an area of intentionality. We've talked about some tools that you can use. Now let's talk about some resources, right? So our work hinges on our ability to be able to bring in resources to be able to continue this work, right? It doesn't matter, like the communicating about it is really important, but it's hard to communicate about stuff when you don't have funding to be able to do the science and do the work, that you really want to be able to do with
That part,
impact.
yes.
Yes, exactly. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about QEM and what we provide as a technical assistance organization completely for free. All right. So this is not like a sales pitch in any kind of way because QEM does all of this for free. Like this is why we are here for the scientific community to be able to provide these types of supports and resources. So I'm going to go back to share page. All right. Okay, so first and foremost, this is our newest program. So anyone who is following any of my social media stuff or my LinkedIn sees this regularly. I'm constantly pushing out the calendar for these events. So our Heroes program is our newest technical assistance program. Now it is intended for non-research one institutions, but very clearly said, as you see, that it is particularly for those schools, but it is not necessarily exclusionary to those schools, right? Okay. So this program provides webinars, free technical assistance through in-person and online trainings and workshops to help people to acquire more resources and funding to do the research that they want to do. So we end up hiring 25 federal program officers who used to work at the federal agencies to do this exclusively. So these are the folks who know where the money is, right? So there are folks from NSF, there are folks from Department of Education, there are folks from NASA, DOD. We've got folks from NIH. So we have the scientists who worked at these agencies who are providing technical assistance to be able to access and navigate these agencies more efficiently. And so some of the things that we have been able to do with that, I'm going to show you, get out of this and go over to there's this. Go to our SharePoint. So here, yes. So QEM, as an educational research nonprofit, we provide a bunch of services and things for free, right? The way you become a QEM network member is by just attending a webinar or workshop. And so all you have to do is you give up your time and that automatically makes you a member. And so once you attend one of our workshops, you will end up getting an email that says, thank you so much for attending. Here's the feedback form, yada, yada. But here is your access to the QEM Resource Hub. This resource hub is a platform that we have created that you will have continued access to in perpetuity as long as your email doesn't change. And within it, we have all types of great tools. We have examples of grant proposals. We have templates for writing grant proposals. We have in our workshop library, every webinar that we've given is available in an on-demand platform. So you can literally go in and search, well, where are all the proposals for grant writing, or where are all the trainings that were given on grant writing? And this is everything that has to do with grants. But then you see, we've got this webinar, we've got this webinar, we've got these recordings, right? And then everything else in here is a document related to grants, right? So this hub is something that we have created for free for all of our network members. We are hoping that folks will use it in conjunction with what their institutions are already providing in terms of resources. Overwhelmingly, QEM serves under-resourced institutions, so a lot of our schools don't have platforms like this, and so we've created it for them. Some of the other really fun, cool things is we have created a concentrated, centralized, there we go, a centralized location for publicly available data sources that folks could be using to further strengthen their proposals and to tell their narratives, right? And so we've got a bunch of great data sources here, right? So the ACS surveys, NCES, the NSF database, iPads is my favorite. Open Data Platform is a great resource. So all types of great tools for folks, again, completely free in our resource hub once you attend any QEM webinar or workshop through our platform. I'll go back to our heroes page real quick. QEM.org. There we go. So here's our platform, and you can see under programs, all of the different programs that we have being offered. Oh, wait, no, I want to go to events. That was what I meant. Sorry, events. So these are all the different events that we have going on. Again, all for free, right? So you just register and you can attend, and then you're automatically, incorporated into the network, right? In that way. So there's that. Um, and then I think that is it. Yeah, because we were at time. So I'm gonna go to my last slide in case anybody wants to find me. Now, how do I do? There we go. No, I don't want to go from beginning. I want to do from. I don't even know how to do this. How do I start from current slide? There we go. Okay. So if anyone's interested in trying to find me, right, or has any other questions, this is my contact information on Linktree. And so, yeah, so let's open up for conversation discussion.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Lynch. This was really helpful and amazing. I really appreciate all of your time and you sharing these incredible resources with our community. So I'll open up the floor for questions from our audience. And I have some myself as well, but let's give everyone else a chance to ask their questions. Um, yeah, not seeing anything yet, so I'll pull up my list here.
Oh, you have a list of
I
questions.
have
Okay,
a
great.
couple. So, yeah, this was incredible. So, Dr. Lynch, talk to us about this idea that I often hear about minority tax, where um, faculty at MSIs are asked to do more service and mentoring with fewer resources. How can we start to build more sustainable models where we design SciComm programs that lighten that load? And I think you touched on a couple ways today using the social media and, leveraging that space and communicating our science and stories through social media and like exploring those avenues. But are there other ways that we can start resourcing our underserved institutions?
Absolutely. Yeah. And my biggest and I'm not gonna say brightest, but like my biggest push for that is we have to bring the money in. Like, so I heard this great quote the other day from, it was a few weeks ago at this point, from James Moore, who's at the National Science Foundation. He was like, 100% of the unsubmitted proposals will go unfunded,
Exactly. Yes.
right? So if you're not submitting proposals, if you're not actively seeking funding to do your work,
Mhm.
then you're constantly going to be in that situation where you don't have the capacity or don't have the resources that you fully need, right? And so if you write the proposals, you can write in for the course release, you can write in for the additional graduate assistants, you can write in for the undergraduate assistants to be able to add capacity, to your day. You can write in support to be able to hire someone to help with the mentoring aspects, right? So cultural taxation is real. Um, at any institution where you are a member of a minoritized group, whether that's are one of few women in a department that has, very few female students, whether that is you are one of, few people of color in a department or a college with, few students of color. So cultural taxation is a real thing, regardless as to what criteria you use to identify the cultural aspects, right? So it swings both ways. So we just have to think about how to work smarter, not harder.
Right.
And for me, that means having as many resources as possible to be able to do this work, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely. That's such a great point. My next question is about the political climate around DEI or diversity, equity, inclusion. And so many of us work at like state-funded institutions, and we've been asked to code switch, so to speak, around DEI language. How do you at QEM like advise program leaders to frame their SciComm equity work to ensure that it's still fundable and it remains true to like the mission and the values and that it's protected and sustainable for the future?
Yeah,
How do you
that's a
know?
great question. And I may piss some people off when I say this, but the bottom line is I use the language. I use the language of the administration to be able to continue to push my values, right? And so when we talk about broadening participation, diversity, equity, inclusion efforts, right? I've completely rephrased that into national security missions, right? So we need an increase of domestic talent in this country for national security. And domestic talent means that we can't overwhelmingly rely on our international students to be able to do some of this work, which means that we need to have the resources available to be able to support that population of students, right? Um, so I use their language, right, to be able to push my values and get the resources I need to continue to do the work that we do. So I don't. Mm, I guess it is a form of code switching, right?
Yeah.
To be able to do that. We are also actively teaching people to start using language that is not language of what's the word? Language of lack. There we go. So we're trying to get people to stop using language of lack and start talking with language of assets or asset-based framing. For example, we don't use racially minoritized people anymore in any of our work. We use people of the global majority,
I love that. That's really good.
right?
It reminds me of our work together on like humanizing language and stuff,
Exactly right.
right?
That's exactly right. That is exactly right.
Right,
Yep.
right.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, anyone in the audience, feel free to take yourself off of mute or type in any questions or comments or feedback that you have for Dr. Lynch. Um, yeah. Well, Dr. Lynch, I want to thank you once more for joining us. You've pulled back the curtains for us on business as usual, and it's been really inspiring to listen to the strategies that you had to share with us today. So thank you for that. You've reminded us that equity isn't just a goal, it's a process, and that it requires
Absolutely.
funding to get to that end.
Absolutely.
And infrastructure and also persistent advocacy, right? We need to continue to do this work and to be out there naming what's happening. To our SciCommers community, as we close the door to the spring of 2026 academic year, I want to leave you with a final thought. We started this community because we knew that science is too important to be kept in a silo. And today's conversation provided that vessel for us to think about science and the institutions that we're building, that they can be just as strong as the message themselves. And so thank you once again, all of you, for your attending today and for Dr. Lynch for your insights. We really appreciate it. Whether you're spending your summer in the lab, in the field, or in a classroom, hopefully you get some beach time and you stay curious and keep sharing your science to the world and society. So this concludes our session today. Please follow us on YouTube, where we have our recordings from all of our mentor chats, and we look forward to seeing everybody in the next academic year in September. Have a wonderful summer, everyone, and thank you. Thanks, Dr. Lynch. Take care.